I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. I hope my audio is okay. That's ringing in my ears a little bit. But good morning. Warming up, well, cold now, but warming up. We're expecting a heat wave that might be up to 40 degrees tomorrow. That'll be a relief on the one hand. But glad to be here. It's a heck of a week. A lot of heavy stuff on our minds here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Principally, the weight comes from everybody thinking about, wondering about the meaning and the consequence of the shooting of young Amir Locke. Amir Locke was shot in the middle or late last week by Minneapolis police in a pre-dawn raid on an apartment building that he was staying in. He was a visitor, and on his couch under blankets. And when police arrived, they opened the door with the key, a pass key, and they've shared the video that showed the train of events within several seconds that led to the officer shooting and killing Amir Locke. So what's going to happen with that, I think, is on my mind, and I'm hopeful that other people who are listening today will call in or weigh in or join the conversation. As always, I'm pleased to have my colleagues from Hawthorne Neighborhood Council. Diana Hawkins is here and Dee Phillips is here. Diana, Dee, good morning to both of you. How are you doing? How are you handling this information? I mean, this comes on top of the shooting of the high school student, the death of a high school student in Richfield. And I don't know what else has happened over the weekend, but all in all, it's oppressive. The feeling of all of this is oppressive and makes me wonder about the discussions we're having in community about, are we learning anything? Can we do something that doesn't lead to just killing of people, for any reason at all? So I don't know what, Diana, what do you think? What's on your mind?
Hi, Al. Hello, everybody. It's sad because there was a 16-year-old that got shot at a birthday party last night. Yep. In addition to either last night or Saturday, he was at a birthday party. In addition to all of the domestic violence that's going on right now, people are killing one another. I mean, just earlier today, there was a domestic where the girl was, calling for help, and, she was waving knives around, I believe is what the article said. But I mean, it's sad and it's bad out here. And, we really as a community need to come together because we know there's issues with the police policies and procedures. We know that, we need to have reform, but at the same time, it's kind of, in this case, I mean, I just don't know what to say because, here's this young man and he was startled even though he had a gun in his hand. I really don't think that he should have been shot. Mm-hmm. If anything, he should have been
told to put the gun down.
Yes, put the gun down, subdued or something. But I mean, he was shot 3 times. Mm-hmm. So that within itself tells me that's a problem, number one. Number two, there's a petition going around to have Mayor Frye and the interim police chief removed, as well as having this police officer charged. Well, when you look at this case, and so to speak, this is kind of no different than the Kim Potter. I mean, he didn't have a gun in his hand. He was fleeing, but she shot him too. And he died. Mm-hmm. Dante Wright. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we're in trouble if change don't come. We really are in trouble. That's my take. This was a sad weekend for me because I've read so much domestic violence and kids being involved and carjackings that, I kind of just wanted to hide in the corner somewhere else.
Turn it off somewhere, right?
Yep. Where does it end?
Mm-hmm. Dee, what are your thoughts? How does this impact you, as a resident and neighbor?
Well, I kind of have to agree with Diana. It's so much. It's so hard to take in. I don't know that removing Mayor Fry is going to make a difference. I don't know what's going to make a difference. I don't know where we start, except that there's too much access to guns. There's not enough emphasis on mental health for our kids or for our neighbors. We're not dealing with the trauma that COVID is creating. Like Diana said, all the domestic violence and stuff. It's such a big problem. I don't even know what string to pull first to start determining what a solution is.
I watched yesterday, I think 3 or 4 series on the death of Michael Donnell. Anybody remember that? Do you see the series? I forgot the name of the series, but it was on demand last night on TV. So Bobby and I watched that, and the mom in this case was Beulah May Donald, and she is from Delisle, Mississippi. And I'm looking at her information on Wikipedia right now. But in March of 1981, her youngest child, his name was Michael Donnell, was lynched by members of the Ku Klux Klan. He was beaten, choked, they slit his throat, and then they hung him from a tree. And they did it kind of like on a main street on Herndon Avenue. And then they stood around, or probably came back around as the authorities came to investigate this body hanging in the city, in the town. And these guys were standing around their pickup truck like they just happened to drive up, right? And the wrong guys were arrested first and had to be let go, but in due time, the actual killers were found because there was dissension and obviously stupidity among them. They were simply held together by this idea of being Klansmen and being supremacist, and they were like the characters in the murder of Emmett Till, white men that felt they had a duty, and it could kill somebody black with impunity. The backstory on this incident, according to the movie that I watched, or the documentary that I watched, was that the incident happened because some days before, another black man in Birmingham, who had been in an altercation with a white cop and killed the cop, and whose trial was held in Mobile, Alabama. I guess, I'm not sure why, but he was acquitted, or not acquitted, but a hung jury. So he walked free. And that was unusual, number one, that happened, but they couldn't. And then the guy who was like the second in command of the Alabama Ku Klux Klan had a meeting of his Klan members, they found out, and said they were mad, and that if a black man could be exonerated by a jury or get away with killing a white man, then white men should be able to kill an N-word, a black man, but the word they used. And they reported that they decided they were going to go on a hunt to find a black man. So it was a hunt. And so the language of hunting a black man is the same kind of feeling and language you got when you consider Ahmaud Arbery. Those guys were like they were going on a hunt in a pickup truck in a car, and using their vehicles to chase and surround and corral and hunting a victim. In this case, they used the word hunt. They were going on a hunt, and they had determined they were going to kill an N-word that night. And so the story kind of reviews the history of slavery in this country, the formation of quote unquote so-called law enforcement. They showed badges that were distributed in the South where they had consuls for people sort of deputized, authorized to chase slaves that were escaping or, they tried to go to their freedom. So there was a whole process of posses and bounty hunters who made a living, a business out of tracking down human beings that they regarded as property. And that after the end of slavery, those slave patrols ended up reinventing themselves as police departments and sheriff's departments. The characters had a certain role and a certain, reputation and a certain quote unquote expertise that their white counterparts appreciated. And so everybody accepted the idea that they should then become the not slave patrol, but law enforcement. And that's kind of how the system of oppression against Black bodies continued even beyond slavery. And so the long and short of this, Diana and Dee, is that they kind of draw the line between the country's insensitivity and, in fact, carelessness, ruthlessness, indifference to Black life. And so the question is, does Black life matter? And you have to look at this process where, both from Trayvon Martin being killed by a vigilante, right, to Arbery, to Breonna, killed in a no-knock raid, to this case now, and wonder whether or not there is a blind spot in the heart or in the mind or the soul or the culture where, under the color of law, in some of these cases, men and women find it easy to take a Black person's life. That's their first reaction, rather than to reason or to think or to talk or to look for alternate solutions. And I say that because I keep thinking about what's the kid's name in Wisconsin who, during a protest, he and his mom, who bought him an illegal, firearm, illegal for him to carry it across state lines from Illinois into Wisconsin. He came to so-called defend the community against the protesters and got into conflict with other white protesters, right? They ended up shooting two, I think killing one. Is that what it was?
Killed two, injured one.
Killed two, injured one. And what's so incredible is how he was then able to walk down the street past law enforcement, weapon in hand, and not be asked to drop the weapon, not be questioned about it, until he finally, I'm not sure how they ended up discovering or deciding that he needed to be addressed in some way for the cause of those shootings. And so how is it that a process can see him and say it's okay that he's got a gun? He's just shot 3 people, killed 2, right? But the structure, the process, the understanding, the culture accepts him and doesn't put a probable cause or automatic condemnation on him. By contrast, a kid sleeping under a blanket and a kid who has legal authority to possess a firearm, and I don't want to go into whether what was right and wrong. I just know this kid is dead, but he is law enforcement's quickness to kill this kid. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
How can the process, the system, the culture produce an immediate reaction that results in his death or that results in Dante Wright's death? But then a few miles away, here's a kid walking down the street having shot 3 people, and there's a presumption that, oh, he's just a kid with a gun, and it's okay. And so,
I think, Al,
yeah,
one reason why people of color And I'm going to say, from the crowd that I saw yesterday, it didn't matter if you was black, white, red, Chinese, or whatever. There were thousands of people at this protest, and you are absolutely right. The police need to stop with this. I'm going to shoot first and ask questions later. Because his name was, I think, Cal somebody, Rittenhour or something.
Yeah, Cal Rittenhour. That's right.
And I don't know if they said he was crazy or whatever, but his mother and father knew that he had this gun. And like you said, here's a man that was asleep under a blanket. He was a hard sleeper, so he probably was startled when they came in there. And then for him to come up with a gun in his hand, we don't know if it was pointed. I mean, I didn't see that.
Right.
But at the same time, you shot him 3 times. That's the piece I can't get over. He was shot 3 times, period. So you meant to do bodily harm to him. This is just the same thing as the George Floyd case. And that's why people are so angry. I don't think it has anything to do with the race or the culture, but I think people are so angry right now that just it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I agree. Let's see if there's anybody in the comments. I see if there's somebody monitoring this on Facebook or YouTube. We'd love to have your comments, your thoughts. Drop a note in the comment section. How do you feel? How's this affecting you? How's this affecting your sense of who we are as a community? And what should we do? How are we going to deal with this question of not only violence, against people by the police under cover of law, but also violence in our community between us as well. I think that we have to raise our voices to figure out and to demand that we come up with solutions that are different. How do we end both stuff that we say is external and stuff that's internal in our community, because it's overwhelming. It really is. So I'm hoping that we're hoping to have, I was going to share with you, there was a statement on this from the NAACP. I have their press release that came from W.C. Jordan Jr. Let's see. You know what? And let's see. I just see that Georgia Fort is live now down at the protest downtown. Now, I wonder, AZ, can you tell us how we can maybe connect into this live from Georgia Fort downtown? Do you know how to do that? Let's see. I'm going to try to share this to you, AZ. I'm listening on my phone to, or share it to, let's see.
So where is it airing?
It's Georgia Fort is posting it to Facebook. And I'm going to try to share it to AZ, and maybe she can figure out how we can tap into it.
I do want to say this, Al, though.
No, go ahead.
Our babies are traumatized again. The little ones. They don't understand why the police keep shooting people. I've had several young ones say to me over the last couple of days, why do the police keep shooting our people? I mean, they're traumatized. Our babies are traumatized again. So, I mean, how do we help them understand this? I mean, these kids are in school. They're talking about it. They're scared because, I mean, here, I just got a notification, gunshots on 46 in Lindale. I mean, this is the type of stuff. It's broad daylight. Why are you out there shooting? Carjacking. The woman got killed the other day. I mean, this is just crazy. But I mean, yeah, like I said, our babies are very traumatized, very traumatized.
Keep talking. I'm trying to send this link while you're talking.
Yeah. I'm gonna let Dee share her thoughts with us, so she can tell us her thoughts on this. Because I know you have grandkids too, Dee. Have they said anything to you about this? Or have you heard anything? You're muted.
My grandkids haven't said anything, but you know, I keep thinking about how lucky I was that my son could leave the house and do something stupid and not die from it.
Right.
And yet other kids his age that weren't white could have. And that just, it stuns me every time I think about that, that I didn't have to worry about that. I worried about stupid. I didn't worry about dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine how it would feel to, to know that anytime your kid leaves the house, something bad could happen.
Yeah.
Just because of the color of their skin. It just amazes me. It stuns me that that's where we are.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wrap my head around that at all. The unfairness of it, the waste of these lives. It's just more than I can take in.
AZ, I sent an email to you. AZ is our producer with the link to Georgia Fort's live feed. They're having a rally downtown right now on the event, and if there's any way for you to figure out how to bring that live feed into the show, I'd love you to do that. And I think before AZ, you have the challenge of bringing the audio in. If you can pick up the audio or the show and then link to it, I think you have to also indicate use computer audio. There's a setting you have to use to ensure that you can bring the audio in as well. So see if you can do that. Let me know the progress that you have. In the meantime, what I was going to do was I sent a note out to Yusuf and Jeannie, who's the vice president of the NAACP for the region here. And I have the press release. I wanted to share that, the comment being made. Let me try to open that up here. So people are reacting and they should be reacting. Just a second here. So the Minnesota Dakota Area State Conference of the National Association of Colored People. See, AZ is making that work. See if you, let me know when you get the sound too, AZ. I'll keep talking until you put it together here. A city that was marred by the public lynching of George Floyd less than 2 years ago has once again been thrust into the spotlight. Okay, you got it, AZ? There you go. So this must be from last night, I believe, not today.
Black lives, 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 black lives.
If you can bring that down, AZ. Yeah, thank you. And there was see if you can follow that link, AZ, because there's a live show. That's from last night. That's the rally downtown last night. But I'm glad you found that and you're able to share it because it gives our viewers and listeners a sense of the intensity. Cold as hell last night. people were out in the cold. That's how angry people are. Cold as hell today. It's going to get warm tomorrow, but it's cold right now. This is Minnesota, and people are braving that cold. They did a caravan protest last night. Plus, they had, I think, the night before, over 1,000 people on the street of downtown Minneapolis. So I believe this is simply the beginning, and it depends on what happens. But people have been calling for the resignation of Mayor Jacob Fry. They've called for the resignation of our interim police chief. I don't have her name right now. You might know it.
Amelia.
Amelia, right. And but the point is, feelings are obviously running very, very high. There is a meeting going on at 1:30, probably starting in a couple of minutes, between city council, the mayor's office, and attorneys for the city and attorneys for the family. I think the meeting includes the Ben Crump and other lawyers on his team representing the family to examine, to discuss the city's policy on the no-knock warrant. And as you do know, okay, here we go. This might be, is this live now, AZ? Put a note in the comment for me. This might be live going on right now. And if it is, this is the feed of independent journalist Georgia Fort, who's done a phenomenal job of keeping people connected to everything that happened in the Wright case and George Floyd, and now here again. Let's listen.
Definitely not a swap warrant for property. We've been yelling people over property for years. And we were just talking about let us get in the streets. Nah, this is 2022. We have come too far. The precedent has been set. We know what justice looks and feels like. We are on the road to getting there, and you are not going to get in the way. We will continue to show up. We will continue to put pressure on you until that chief is gone, until the antagonizing cop is gone, until the murderous cop is gone. And to be honest with you, I'd like to see Mayor Jacob Fry be gone. He is not demonstrating leadership at all. At all. And as he who's an elected official, it just really, it sickens me. It sickens me. Because when I think about this great so-called democracy that folks are supposed to have, right? And as I ran to get into this elected seat, all I could constantly think in my mind is, I'm carrying the people to this seat. Who is he carrying? I'm sure his constituents are not okay with this. If you are a voter of Jacob Fry, I demand that you send that letter, email, phone call, however you like to communicate, and let him know that you need him to step down. And we're a true leader in the city of Minneapolis, because we need just.
So we've got probably some bandwidth issues there. AZ, if you can monitor that and bring it back in from time to time. But it's intense. So let me keep reading some of the press release. And I think we're going to be joined momentarily by Tekin Zia Aida. Hopefully he'll join the conversation as well. So, okay, here we go. Well, AZ, just take it down for a second, and we'll bring it back in a couple of minutes. Let me go ahead and share this part from the Minnesota-Dakota Area State Conference of the NAACP. A city that was marred by the public lynching of George Floyd less than 2 years ago has once again been thrust into the spotlight for what can only be described as unforgivable police practices. Amir Locke, 22, was not the subject of MPD's warrant, had no prior police record, was in possession of a legal firearm, and is now the latest victim of what has become known as police executions across the country. Our communities cannot be asked to trust law enforcement on a consistent basis when the dead provide more answers than the living. Our communities cannot be asked to be patient as all facts emerge while law enforcement omits facts in hopes of avoiding media black lash, and that's from the NAACP National Office. A life was taken, which demands transparency. Perhaps more importantly, however, accountability. We demand that the NPD officer who killed Amir Locke be terminated immediately. Additionally, the state conference calls on Governor Walz to immediately undertake the following actions. One, direct every police department in the state and every law enforcement agency to suspend all use of no-knock warrants pending a determination by the Minnesota Board Peace Officers Standards and Training post, they call it, as to whether the no-knock procedure is an appropriate use of police power. Two, direct the post board to hold an emergency session under its regulatory powers, immediately declare that the use of no-knock warrants is not an allowed police procedure in the state of Minnesota. It goes on to say, during this difficult time, the NAACP would like to send thoughts, prayers, and comfort to Amir Locke's family. We're dedicated to ensuring that a badge is never used as a shield for accountability. And that's from the W.C. Jordan, Jr., president of the NAACP Minnesota Dakotas Area State Conference. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Our Monday Neighborhood Leadership Group. I'm here with my colleagues and partners, Diana Hawkins and Dee Phillips from Hawthorne Neighborhood Council. We're joined by our friend Tekin Zia Aida. Tekin, good to see you. Thank you for being here. We were saying this is a heck of a day. And we also were sharing some of the video of the live protest going on downtown, thanks to a brilliant and fearless journalist, Georgia Fort,
Yes.
who has been posting not only in this incident, but she posted during the Wright incident, and she posted during George Floyd. And all I can say is hats off to her for her professionalism and her courage in getting the story out to you. But Tekin, jump in. We're monitoring that. If something comes in, we'll cut into it for a second. But what are your thoughts, my friend?
Sounds good. So first, I just want to say, Diana knows this, but I've had like a real bad migraine starting like early this morning, and so I hope I'm not going to be too loopy. But I wanted to come on at least briefly to talk about this. And so, happy Black History Month.
Right. Well, that's what this is. It's history.
You know, and if there ever are reminders of our history and our place in this country, and our place specifically in the great state of Minnesota and the great city of Lakes, Minneapolis, it was this murder of a young, legally armed African-American male. The one thing that is, I think, so important that I wanted to bring up is I want our people and our community at large to look beyond the media spin that is only giving about 45% of the picture, exonerating Mayor Fry for his lack of leadership, not even thinking to call out Lisa Goodman, my former political rival who was reelected resoundingly in Ward 7. This murder happened smack dab in the luxury sector of downtown Ward 7. Right around the corner from PV Plaza, where in 2012, and people in the media are starting to talk about this, and community members, the state's law enforcement was taking part in an illicit drug testing scheme where they were picking up protesters from the Occupy movement and homeless kids and bringing them out to a warehouse and giving them drugs. Again, here downtown, across from Orchestra Hall at PV Plaza in downtown Ward 7.
I remember that. Tell me about that. Remind me of that. I remember that.
Well, I mean, it's during the Occupy movement that was happening around the country. There were many alternative community members who were protesting and sitting in. And of course, there were the downtown homeless. And what we came to find out was that the state's law enforcement agencies were allowed to come downtown Minneapolis and pick up homeless and alternative youth, one of which I knew the family personally from my old professional life. And they were taken out to a warehouse out in Bloomington and given drugs and and monitored. Illegal drugs, illicitly picked up and given these drugs. So that's just saying that there's a history of unsavory stuff that happens in downtown Minneapolis in Ward 7, Lisa Goodman's 20 going on 5-year stronghold. But more importantly, well, equally as important, if not more importantly, right now for this particular situation and loss of a dignified and holy life, I want people to remember that Mayor Fry, in his march towards re-election, campaigned on doing away, like he made it seem like he was already had done it or was going to immediately do it come day one, doing away with no-knock warrants. So much so that some of the AstroTurf groups that were, championing his re-election scrubbed their websites of that portion of his credentials for re-election. And so this is a dereliction of duty, of looking out for the greater community. And yet again, this is the fourth, high profile murder by Jacob Fry's MPD, of which even before he was given full mayoral power, he always had control over MPD. And so, now they're debating, and now it's this big conversation. Of course, Jacob is going out of his way to quietly minimize the fact that he lied to us, played on our heartstrings, our hopes and dreams for a better city so that he could be reelected. Same thing with Lisa. So if there's any better way to celebrate Black History Month and the loss of this young man's life, it is once and for all as a Black community standing up and saying no more and holding these people accountable. And I say there's no greater template than what's going on right now in London with Boris Johnson. Let's just,
explain that.
It's almost inevitable that he will be forced out of the premiership for lying and for, under his administration, attending and hosting, not socially distanced beer and liquor parties at number 10 Downing Street, whilst the rest of the nation, including Her Majesty the Queen, was adhering to the laws of COVID, restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
The Queen's own husband died, and instead of having a huge state funeral, she sat alone adhering the orders of number 10. So, it's a lack of confidence. He lied. We can't have dual, one set of rules for leadership and the rest for, a set for the rest of us. And so the British people and enough MPs are calling for his resignation. And I have, and as well as some other, key people in the city, political talking heads, have called for Jacob's resignation because he has failed to be the leader that he bamboozles us into believing that he is or wants so desperately to be in this next opportunity. And so I talked to David Brower on Twitter. Go to Twitter, everyone's, this is a movement. And if it was to happen, which would be very difficult, he would have to make the decision to stand down, to leave, to vacate the mayoral office. I believe that if the municipal voice is united and strong enough from every sector, a no vote of confidence, how can he stay? He's not wanted. And if he did stand down, Andrea Jenkins would become the mayor, either until there was a special election, or she would, if it was after, I think, March or May, I can't remember what David said, she would ride out the 2-year term. And if she wanted to run for re-election as mayor. Now, I mean, I'm not promoting this, but when is enough enough? And these people realize that they can no longer play with Black lives. And I remind everyone, I think I had said this to you the last time that I was on, there are no more quantity of Black Lives Matter signs in front yards than in Ward 7. And during my race, I was trying to get the point across to my hopeful constituents that Black lives cannot matter without Black political power to assure those lives.
So your critique is that the profession that Black Lives Matter is meaningless unless there is action that gives it meaning. And so you're saying that you lived in a ward and sought office in a ward that among all the 13 wards in the city had the highest representation of lawn signs saying Black Lives Matter, but the outcome of the election was
the opposite.
Mhm.
And you know, a ward that has the highest.
So what's that critique? Criticize that and make the critique.
It's simple. You know, I mean, I feel that these people, and they're not bad people. I mean, there's some rotten apples in the crate. I can tell you stories how people thought that they could speak to me. But it's almost as if these people think that they're the ancient Hebrews putting blood over the doorway so that wrath would pass them by. And I'll tell you, of all the hundreds of yards, homes, good Minneapolitans that had those signs in their yards, maybe 2 or 3, you know, that weren't Black families, put my sign next to theirs, to the Black Lives Matter. Most of those houses hid from me, refused to speak to me, or, you know, just had to really think about supporting my campaign. Here I was, the only African-American, well, Afro-Latin, you know, I mean, Afro-Colombian, but African-American, Black descendant of forced laborers, who, you know, when Dante Wright was killed, I mean, I fell out of the campaign for a good 2 weeks because it was a conflict of conscience, because, as you know, I wasn't supporting abolition, I was supporting absolute reform, which is not what these people want either. They wanted a return to the status quo, which is the death of Amir Locke. That is the Minneapolis status quo.
Talk about, but downtown is quite another. And you made reference to this being downtown Minneapolis, 7th Ward. What does that mean from your point of view? How does that figure into this equation of when and where police action takes place, how the community looks at it, responds to it?
It wasn't, you know, Minneapolis, and I'm sure many other cities too, but I know Minneapolis is still formed along the old red lines, 100-plus-year-old racial covenants. You know, 50 years ago, African Americans, downtown was a sundown town. Prince was the first African American musician allowed to perform in a downtown music venue. The murder of Amir Locke happened right across from Orchestra Hall. And I can't remember Westminster Presbyterian, which is, you know, a venerable blue-blooded Christian cathedral, one of the oldest and most prominent in the state. It is surrounded where he was murdered which is a building I knocked with Esther Agbaje, who represents that area and lives there. And she said that publicly, so that's why I
Yeah,
say
she and she has expressed her concern.
Oh,
She
yes.
just so the people who might not know, Esther represents my district in North Minneapolis and ours, Diana and Dee, and also downtown. She's a state representative. She's in the seat that was once held by
Ray
Keith
Dean.
Ellison, Keith Ellison, Ray Dean, Bobby Joe Champion. Who else had that seat? Randy Stedden. Um, uh, Richard Jefferson.
You're going way.
Yeah, I'm going way back. I'm going way back. But this is a critical and key seat
The point is that
in North
it is the
Minneapolis. Yeah.
center of the economic infrastructure, the social, cultural infrastructure of the city and state of Minnesota. It is not a high density African American neighborhood. I mean, of course, due to corporate, diversity and inclusion, and the modern era, clearly everybody lives everywhere, kind of, to a point in this day and age. But it's not a high immigrant, it's not a high African American, it's not a high Latino. It is a luxury sector of the city. And the police busted through and murdered someone who, after MPD had said he was a suspect, we now know is not even listed or named on the warrant, and didn't even live in the house. And again, yes, he did. He was armed. It's not our business to question why he was armed at all. And according to authorities, the family, the lawyers, he was legally trained, legally licensed, and had the permits. And he was murdered in 9 seconds.
Yeah, and not our business, but I understood he drove DoorDash or something like that and was partly armed for his own security, because this is a town that's been experiencing carjackings, right? And the victims have been cabbies and what's that driving service called? Delivery and
DoorDash and Uber and Lyft. Yes.
the other
Yes,
thing that
I mean, they're exposed to. They've been exposed to the elements.
right. So then that's one part. And the other thing that I just want to throw out there again, I have two questions that you probably don't have an answer to, but I'll throw them out for listeners. And these are part of what I'll be looking into as I write the story for Inside News. One is, so were there arrests after the shooting? Did they find who they wanted, or did they get what they wanted? Question number one, what did they want? If it was a property warrant, I'm presuming that means they were looking for documents or things, property of some sort. And I don't know that there was anyone named as a suspect. It was simply property in that facility, as if it's like a drug search or something like that. I don't know that, but I'm just raising the question. So I ask, was there someone detained, arrested? I don't know the answer. Maybe someone else does. I'll be asking that question.
I feel that if there was,
it would have been public,
because it would have justified in their eyes.
Yeah, why they did this, and why they're.
But I do real quick. I do know that they supposedly had the mindset or the warrant to go into at least 3 apartments in that building, which is very interesting.
And they only did one, or they did 3? Did they do 3 apartments or just 1? Do you know?
There's so many things that we don't know. Mm-hmm. And because we have we're bereft of leadership in this town.
The other concern I heard, I've heard several times, where the young man's mom and dad were expressing their grief and their anger and their commitment to not let this death or any other deaths like it be in vain. And the language I heard was both riveting and poignant. In one occasion, I heard the young man's mother, her name is Miss Wells now, say that she's dedicating her life to make sure that no one else is murdered in his sleep. And just the image, the power of that image, that statement, gets you right in the heart and in your soul. Then I also heard the father, Mr. Locke, say something that captured my attention. He said that this young man is from a law enforcement family
Mm.
that his uncles
Yep.
are sheriffs or officers,
Yep.
one of whom works for the federal government, had been assigned to CIA and is now with Homeland Security. And then at a later interview, I heard him say that the the young man's grandfather is a Vietnam War veteran, and I believe he said he was a prisoner of war.
Mhm.
So
And
can I
that
say something?
he's,
sir?
huh?
Can I
So
say something real pointed to that, Ben?
yeah, go right ahead. Go right
These
ahead.
are Black people, possibly the likes that most Minnesotans don't have a lot of experience with.
Mhm.
These are credentialed, all-American
Mhm.
leaders of our race. And it's my hope and prayer that they hold people by the necks accountable.
Mhm. Well, you know, the cousin wasn't even in the house. They haven't said any more about him. They haven't said who really lived in the house. You know what I mean? So, I mean, they're right there within itself. And if they had the warrant for 3 places in there, did they, like you said, did they go to the other places? You know what I mean? No, they just shot him and that was it. Now, I did see them come out the house with envelopes, but like you said, what were they looking for specifically?
I'm sending a note to AZ. AZ is a live program still going on downtown.
These Black women have
Here we go.
suffered for each other. That's what it brings. COVID, but I want the women to lock together because that is what's going to happen and what needs to happen as we move things forward.
This one's going to be different.
Forward. And we want to know if you can do the same thing because we need you. We didn't start this problem. We didn't create this problem, Mississippi. Come on. We come from the top all the way down. And I bring you those words on behalf of Mamie Till Mobley. This is not about vengeance. This is not about violence. This is about truth, justice, and accountability.
That's right.
What more do you want? That's what we want. And we want justice for who? Amir Rise. Amir Locks. Say his name. Amir Locks. Say his name. Amir Locks. Say his name. Amir Locks. Who is standing here locked together in support of justice, truth, and accountability? Who are you? Black women. Women who hold up half the sky. That's right. So what do you want from us? We've given enough. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cut away for a second. Let's come back to AZ. Bring that down. Let's talk about that. That's my friend, our friend Deborah Watts. She was going to be on today, but we see where she is. Deborah Watts is the cousin of Emmett Till. Her family set this whole thing in motion. Young Emmett Till murdered in Money, Mississippi, right? She mentioned Mamie Mobley, Emmett's mom, who fearlessly committed that the world would see her son's face. They had the casket sealed and got the body out of Mississippi up to Chicago, where Emmett and his mom and family lived, under the agreement that the casket would not be opened. She said, find me a crowbar. I'm going to open this casket. And they relented and went with her and opened up the casket. And hundreds of thousands of people visited this wake, this funeral, and the world saw. And Jet Magazine and Ebony Magazine, but Jet in particular, put the picture of the disfigured face of Emmett Till on the cover. I remember my Tika and my parents owned a grocery store in Kansas City. I remember the week that publication came out. I might have been 8, 9, 10 years old. And we had it on the counter and we talked about it. And that was one of the lessons about being Black in the South, but being Black anywhere, because it doesn't have to be South. It could be, South
Black
Minneapolis,
in Minnesota.
South Minnesota, right, or South Canada. And last night, Bobby and I were watching the show about the Native people in Canada. I don't know if you guys saw this yet, but how they forced children out of their homes and put them in Catholic church schools. And they did it with the mantra, kill the Indian, save the man. So their mental genocide and actual physical genocide included an arrogance that they felt they had the authority, the right to remake a human being. And what they did was murder families, individuals, a culture. But you know what? Tegan, as Deborah was just saying, everything is going to have to be accounted for.
Everything.
Period.
Everything.
Everybody's story. This is what truth and reconciliation demands. And for us to move forward on this planet, there has to be a recounting.
Because otherwise, it's about dismantling the current system. This was a African American man from what we now understand was an upstanding African American family. It now makes, based on what you told me about the law enforcement connection within generations of that family, that he would be trained, licensed firearms carrier, and whatnot. This will be different, especially on the heels of a horrific municipal election that basically played with our lives, played with our tears, continued to kill Black men. Dolal Id.
Tegan, what's downtown Minneapolis going to say? Does downtown Minneapolis bear any accountability, responsibility? Do we all, not just downtown, but since the deed happened downtown, what's downtown's responsibility? What's the 7th Ward's responsibility, accountability?
The 7th Ward's responsibility is total and complete. Lisa Goodman knows where all of the bodies are buried since 1997, I think it is. One of the things that I tried to figure out during my race was how many people have been killed by MPD since 1997. And I lay that squarely at Lisa's feet. She is the longest standing, after Bob Johnson was defeated, council member in that castle downtown. She has a extensive and unquestioned allegiance to law enforcement, to developers, to the status quo.
Let me close with going back to the live AZ for the next 2 or 3 minutes, if they're still going on. And we're at the end of our hour. Tika, I'm going to thank you so much. I hope your headache is managed and that you feel better. Diana, thank you. Okay. And Dee, thank you. But AZ, are they still in the protest downtown? If they are, please bring them back on the screen. Or let me know in the chat if that's still going on.
Before we switch over, Al, I want to go back to what you're saying about the Indian genocide.
Yep.
That's history we're not learning.
Yeah.
And that's a criminal act, I think.
Thank you for the comment. Let's listen for the next 3 or 4 minutes and we'll close with this. And I'll let you know in the chat when to sign off, AZ. Thank you, all my friends. Thank you. Tegan. Turn the volume up. No, turn the volume up, AZ. Yeah.
Temporary chief of police, she gotta go. But the judges who continue to sign these nasty, evil warrants, as my dear friend Leslie Redmond says, the whole damn system is guilty as hell. And until you acknowledge that at the state capitol, Minnesota will forever, ever, ever be the slave masters of the North.
Yes.
We're not taking it anymore. We were freed, born free. Okay? So this is your warning. The sins of you will fall on your children and your children's children. If you look at the pandemic, it is falling. It's time to allow us to be humans. It is time to recognize our humanity. And it is time to stop chasing us as if we were slaves. Thank you.
Let's end it there. AZ, thank you. Thank you, my guest. Let's stay tuned. We'll keep this conversation.